Hello and welcome to the Matt Chambers Show, connecting people, places, and ideas. I'm your host, Matt Chambers. This is the podcast about living, traveling, and doing business internationally. Each week, we bring you inspiring stories and actionable insights to help you create a life beyond borders. Tune in and turn your dreams into reality. So how's everything on your end? How are you?
I'm doing great. Just swamped with lots of clients. So, yeah. But that means that's a good thing. That's a good thing nowadays.
Yeah, you can't complain about that. Bukele's turned El Salvador around. Now everyone wants to go check it out, huh?
Yep. And that's the thing. It's sometimes people ask us to reserve. They're like, well, what's your tour plans in July and August? I'm like, oh, we don't plan that far out because Bukele, you don't know what, like next month, he might introduce, and then all of a sudden we have a completely different market or a completely different flow of clients. So we only plan out like 4 months ahead max, because you never know what new surprise he's going to throw out.
But for the most part, they've been good surprises, right?
Oh yeah,
compared to where El Salvador was.
He's taken a lot of gambles, but they have all paid off. They've all paid off.
You know, I saw the other day he's the most popular president in the world right now.
Oh yeah, definitely.
My dad was telling me about 6-8 months ago that he works with a guy from El Salvador, and that guy was telling him that as a kid, he was literally walking over dead bodies to go to school.
Yeah.
And now you just don't have any of that. Not even close, right?
Nope. In fact, you'll probably pass a police officer or two on your way to school now. But I mean, even back then, that wasn't necessarily a good thing because you didn't know if they're a good cop or a bad cop. But now they're all good cops.
They're all good cops. They're getting paid, and they're
getting paid a good, meaningful wage. So there's like no need for any of that. Plus, honestly, the people themselves, I mean, the whole vibe is just, it's integrity and hope, and the people will throw anybody who's being chueco or being kind of like crooked, you could say. They will totally throw them under the bus. They whip out their phone and they're like taking screenshots and video recording, like, look at this guy totally, breaking these laws. And, they'll post it on social media and they'll tag, the police and, hey, he's right here at this place. Come and get him with their video. Yeah, because they suffered for so long and had to just keep a tight lip about all these things that were wrong that they saw going on, that now they ain't taking it. They're like, no, they will bust you in 2 seconds flat. That's why, especially, I tell my clients, make sure you keep your nose super clean in El Salvador because you are a guest.
And so this is the first time that a lot of Salvadorians have seen the country in such a good place, and they're jumping on board, huh? He's created a movement behind him that is doing a lot of the work for him, it sounds like.
Yeah, a lot of the diaspora helped him get into office.
What's the diaspora?
Diaspora are people that have moved away from the country. Moved out of the country and live in foreign countries, but they still have a right to vote because they're still citizens. So yeah, there's in El Salvador, they just did a census. There's over 6 million Salvadorans, and they estimate there's about 3 million plus Salvadorans outside of El Salvador.
There are only 6 million Salvadorians in total?
In the country.
In the country, and 3 million outside.
Yes.
So that's a really small country.
3 million plus, yeah. Technically, it's the size of Delaware. So yes, a very small, but it is definitely a David among the Goliaths. That's for sure.
Yeah, you have a lot of stuff to do down there. There's a lot going on for sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, Bitcoin, of course, is super big now that it's over 100. When I moved there 3 years ago, it was at 21. And but now the big thing is Bukele's found gold.
What's he doing with gold?
He found underneath there's a big mineral belt that goes across the northern part of the country, and there's a whole bunch of different mining spots that have not been explored because mining was outlawed. El Salvador is the only country that has like no mining whatsoever is allowed in El Salvador. Mining was outlawed a long time ago because, way back in the day when mining practices were really bad, they had some, it was, back in the old kind of those American imperialist kind of days where we kind of came into countries and did whatever we wanted and didn't really take a whole lot of accountability for it. So a lot of villages and people were poisoned and died from the mining, and that's why they outlawed it and said no, because of the damage that was done and the lack of responsibility that the companies would take and the corruption. And so, but he's found a whole bunch of gold that is intermixed among the volcanoes. So I think he's hoping, from what I've read and heard, he's hoping that with new technology and with all the advances that we have, we can get the gold out while still preserving the naturaleza. I'm trying to think, what is that word in English?
The nature.
Yeah, nature and the environment, and not have the drastic effects on the environment, and make the mining companies more accountable.
Well, a lot of that's exaggerated anyway. I mean, even they've turned a lot of that stuff political in the U.S. and when you really look at it, like they exaggerate a lot of the negative impact of that on the environment. Anyway, I mean, back in the day, it was way worse. But if you really look into it, that's mostly been blown up into a political thing just to get votes. I'm not saying it doesn't impact the environment. It definitely does, but I don't think that we have any risk of, most of what they talk about it would never ever come to fruition.
Yeah, the problem is Salvadorans are not very trusting because of their past. They have a whole lot of reasons to not trust foreign companies and entities that may not have their best interest in mind.
Sure.
And honestly, they don't really trust each other very much either. Granted, from 20 years of civil war and then another 20 years under gangs. And so there's a phrase in El Salvador saying, who is the enemy of a Salvadoran? It's another Salvadoran. But we've taken the first steps of moving towards integrity and cutting out corruption. And by doing this great big kind of chop, this like deep surgery on El Salvador, integrity is the vibe and hope is the vibe, and not putting up with anybody else's bullying or abuse or crap is very much what's going on. And so that's one of my big things is when I help people move here is I'm like, okay, first you need to, a lot of Americans when they travel the world, they have a very America-centric view. And so when I come down here, I'm like, look, this is not your country. You are an immigrant. Remember all of your preconceived beliefs about immigrants in your country? Now you are an immigrant. So how you wished an immigrant would behave in your country, you don't be a hypocrite. Like, follow the laws.
I've noticed that too. Americans have this, because many things work so well in the U.S. And when you go to places like Latin America, you just have to get in your head that the majority of the things that you're used to that just goes so smoothly and works so well just aren't going to work in other countries. And then on the other side of that, there's so many things that other countries do so much better than we do them in the U.S. But you're just maybe not maybe not used to them. But I find that Americans, when they go abroad, they leave the U.S. for whatever reason they left for, and
Mm-hmm.
then they go to the other country for a change and ultimately try to turn that other country back into the U.S. It's like, why'd you
Yeah.
leave? You know, like,
Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
want it to be exactly like the life you had at home, I don't know why you left.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And that's something they call deculturation. And yeah, that really makes me sad. That's why one of the things I do with my clients is when I do my relocation tours, like the whole first, 5 days is all about what El Salvador has to offer. We're going to hit you with all the cultural shocks
Mm-hmm.
that are usually non-negotiables for most people. And but the very last day, it's about, okay, what are you here to give? Why does El Salvador want you to be part of its, to be a citizen?
Mm-hmm.
How are you here to make this place a better place than how you found it? But not from a, oh, we're going to clean this place up kind of attitude, from a, um, I am here. This is who I am. How can I help?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of attitude. Like if you come with a how can I help? I want to be part of this that is not mine, it is yours, then you will have a wonderful time in El Salvador.
What are some of those things that attract people to El Salvador? Some of the things that you
Um
may show in your relocation tours.
Honestly, the biggest thing is the sovereignty and the freedom. It's El Salvador is moving towards sovereignty and freedom, and yet and people say like, oh, but look, there's trash in the streets, and oh, the sidewalks aren't all nice and orderly and clean. And the thing with El Salvador that attracts people is that it's direction. It doesn't matter about location. It doesn't matter if you're first world, third world, 15th world, whatever you want to say. It's direction. And a lot of people see the first world countries as going the wrong direction, and they see El Salvador as going the right direction. So even though they have to take, you could say, a cut in their comfort and in their entitlements, they're willing to build something with what's presented to them. Their principles rule over their comfort. And that's a big key to coming to El Salvador, is you got to do it for the principles, because there's no crime. There's no tort law. There's no this is in social justice. Nuh-uh. No, you're the guest. Um, and so, yeah. So you really have to have like a pioneering spirit. And that's most of the big draws of my clients that come here.
Do you find that? I mean, I guess this whole movement to El Salvador is new, so you probably don't have enough history to know whether or not people actually stay after a certain time, right? I mean,
Oh, sure. We've been helping people do it for the last 3 years, and I've had some clients that left.
mhm.
That, yeah, they came on a lot of the hype, or for Bitcoin, or they came on. They come to me. They say, "Take me to Bitcoin City," and I'm like,
They've actually built a city.
No, but in the redes, President Bukele, when he came in, he said, we're going to build this, crypto Bitcoin City hub, right? And he put all this, he's a marketer. He's a
Yeah,
really good marketer. And
yes.
so he put these images out for his plans, and he's very much a visionary of, like, he puts the vision out and then he kind of manifests it and creates it. And so the problem is they come with this idea in their head from the hype, and they're like, show me Bitcoin City. I'm like, welcome to the Valley of Bushes. It's like,
There's,
see, in between this volcano and that volcano, it's a great big valley of bushes. And then
mhm.
like what? I'm like, it's planned. It's like anything else. And sometimes they hit a really stark reality. So, for example, that's why I started my relocation tours, is
Mhm.
because I had these well, they actually weren't our clients. They came with another immigration service who just did their paperwork, and then they got there, and after a couple months they started hitting some of the cultural shocks, that they weren't prepared for. And then after a year, they came to us saying, I'm in a mess. I'm in this rental contract that I can't get out of. Can you help me? I made a mess with this and this and this. And so I'd say half of our clients are newbies that come from my YouTube. And the other half of our clients are people that are already here that need us to clean things up.
What are some of those cultural issues that they face when they get there that forces them out?
Well, I can say because now in my relocation tour, I hit those. I make sure I take my clients up against every single one of those cultural issues to say like, okay, this is the way it is. It's not going to change for you. So if you can live with this, great. If you can't live with this, then you need to consider somewhere else. One, for example, is how conservative the country is. I mean, after Trump got elected, there's a lot of more far lefters that were looking to leave the U.S., but El Salvador is not your country if you're far left, because it is a very conservative, traditional country. There's abortion is illegal. You can't get out there with your LGBTQ signs, and well, I mean, you can. There is free speech, but you can't.
No one's going to support it. They're just going to look at you like you're an idiot.
Yeah, they're just going to be like, really? We just got over being afraid we were going to die the next day. It's not high enough up in the Maslow triangle, right? To be a really high priority for them right now. They're just so relieved being able to live and have freedom that
but the small things don't matter. That's the thing that I notice with the U.S. in general is, the big things are taken care of. If you want to eat, you can eat. If you want to get a job, you can get a job. All these, you're not fearing for your life in the U.S. for the most part, right? I mean, you can get out there and survive and do well if you want to. You get what you put in the U.S. And then some of these other countries, they're just looking to eat, right? Yeah. I mean, and survive and not get shot, and that's So they look at these stupid things like these rights groups we have in the U.S., like you just said, LGBTQ, like those, these people are like, that's just a problem they don't have time for, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like the Latin well. One thing that has been pretty high in the media is that President Bukele fired a bunch of LGBTQ plus activists that were working for the government because they created this flag that was the El Salvador flag, but it had the El Salvador seal of the government on an LGBTQ flag. Ugh. And that did not fly. And a lot of people lost their jobs, and of course they were up in arms of like, look, this is, you're shutting down minority groups and stuff like that. And I mean, the president said, look, this has got nothing to do with how you live your life. This is about you tried to mix our government with your ideology. Mm-hmm. That is like if somebody put a big, Catholic, Virgin Maria or something on a flag with the El Salvador seal state symbol. Mm-hmm. It's like he would have fired them too.
Absolutely. Because I think all those movements are ending anyway, with guys like him getting in, Trump getting in, even Putin. Not even Putin. Putin kind of led the way on this. He actually banned a lot of that stuff too in Russia, and I think even China banned the LGBTQ movement. So, not just that. I don't think either one of us are trying to pick on just that one movement, but all those movements where people just get bored and decide they need attention and create this crap.
Well, but it is very conservative. That's what I was kind of saying, is that, like, for example, one of the clients that we helped move back to Europe, he said pretty much he's like, there's not enough strip clubs, was his complaint.
He said that?
Yes. That's kind of the summation of his disgruntledness with El Salvador. He was saying kind of it's too conservative leaning for him, too restrictive. And he kind of summed it up with, it just comes down to not enough strip clubs for me. And I'm like, yeah, you didn't do your due diligence before you came here. And so, yeah, because it is a conservative country. Another client
He
that,
could go to Colombia. There's plenty of strip clubs there.
there you go. But another cultural thing that people come up against is, well, there was a man that wanted to create a Buddhist retreat of pure silence, right? So we took him to mountaintop, to volcano top, I mean, all over the country, trying to find some mountaintop, some location that had pure silence. If you've been to Latin America, no,
if you're coming to Latin America for peace and quiet, you're screwed.
Yeah, you are screwed. You need to go to some far back, find a mountaintop in Europe, or find some rice paddy field in Asia or something, or the outback of Australia. So for him, it was just the loud music and the parties and the fireworks. They love their fireworks.
In Salvador?
Yes.
Yeah, yep. Colombia does too.
Yep. And at any time of the night. And there are not any noise ordinances. So that's one of the things we do. Our very first night when my clients come, we take them immediately to this restaurant called Pura Candela, and we teach them how to do the Salvadoran cumbia, and they get exposed to Los Hermanos Flores, which is kind of like the Jackson 5 of El Salvador. And they get used to the loud music, and it's not a thing of like, oh, but my kids, because here everybody dances. You got a 7-year-old dancing with grandma, doing the cumbia with grandma, or doing salsa. It's a family event. It's not something like, it's not so like kind of nightclubish as like the US, where it's like, oh, only the adults go out dancing and things like that. No, it's a family thing. Yeah. And the loud music is here to stay. So
and in all of Latin America, I've always found that interesting is, you go to a bar or restaurant and people take their 3, 4, 5-year-old kids there, and they're dancing that's the reason these people are just so happy, and everyone dances and has a good time. And, I think if you say that to an American that's really never had that experience in Latin America, they'd be like, oh my God, I can't believe they take their 5-year-old to a bar, right? But what I've found is that most of these kids grow up with a lot better handle on alcohol than Americans do, and arguably because they've had that experience, right? It's just kind of normal for them. In Colombia, people think I'm crazy until they experience it, but every girl that I ever dated in the country of Colombia didn't drink.
Was what?
They didn't drink.
Oh,
the girls that I dated in Colombia, they never drank. They just nothing. You would go out to a bar or whatever, they'd order a juice. And so it was interesting. You look at these places and you're like, oh, they do party and act like you do drugs and all that stuff. It's just not true.
Isn't that the crazy thing? Because, as much as the U.S. is just like, oh, all these, get your drugs out of our country and all this stuff. And it's like, okay, wait a minute. So if you guys are growing the drugs, I'm like, why is there no drug problem here? Why don't the kids ever use the drugs or anything? Why are you shipping it up north? And
it's a business.
And it's like they're not so... How do I say this? I don't know how to say this politically correctly, so I'm not.
You don't have to. I don't do PC.
Okay, because they're not so spoiled that they have the extra time and money to
blow it on drugs,
to dwell on how can I get my next high, my next stimulant. It's like they're still, a little bit above. It takes a whole lot of spoiling or a whole lot of, as I said, moving up on that Maslow's triangle before you get into like massive drug problems and things like that.
Well, I also think a lot of it's a cultural issue in the States too, right? Everyone's like super stressed out, and everyone's trying to be so much more than they are currently. And when they aren't achieving that as quickly as they think or as quickly as society thinks they should, then I think they turn to other things. And, when you're trying to work 70, 80, 90 hours a week, which is pretty unnatural, and trying to be what you're not. The only escape for a lot of Americans is some form of substance. And
Yeah.
in Latin America, what I find is they're enjoying the small things in life, right? They're enjoying just hanging with their buddies and making friends, things that a human being naturally wants to do.
Mm-hmm.
They do on a daily basis, and that's where they get their happiness and their escape. They don't need the substances. Do you need reliable shipping across Latin America and the Caribbean? CaribbeanShipper.com specializes in delivering from the U.S. straight to your door in Colombia, Panama, and Argentina. And yes, they also serve the Caribbean, from Turks and Caicos all the way down to Trinidad. Right now, they're rapidly expanding in Medellin, Colombia, and quickly growing their presence in Panama and Argentina. With door-to-door tracking, insured shipments, and seamless customs handling, they've got your shipping needs covered. So whether you're a digital nomad, a retiree, or a business scaling internationally, Caribbean Shipper is your trusted partner. From consolidating online orders to shipping full container loads, they ensure your packages arrive safely. So register today at CaribbeanShipper.com/register and let them take care of your shipping needs throughout Latin America and the Caribbean.
It's funny. I have a client. Well, I just did a video with this family that came down, and she's Salvadoran and he's American, but they have 4 kids, and they moved their whole family down from Minnesota. And it's interesting. From his gringo perspective, he was like, I love it here. This was my idea. He's like, I get a little bit of church, a little bit of kid family, a little bit of beer, a little bit of, a little bit of work. It's a lot more just a balanced, chill kind of atmosphere.
Yep.
And he was just like, this is my good life,
Yeah, you're not just constantly running 100 miles an hour, and at the end of the night, the only thing that a lot of people have is some form of escape. And for me, it was drinking. I never was into any drugs, but I would come home, not every night, but on the weekends. You'd work all week, and Friday, Saturday, you should go out with your friends and just drink it off because you had such a stressful, miserable week most of the time, and you had zero interaction with friends or family or anything like that. It was just work, work, work all day, all night, and then Friday you don't have any plans, so it's like, what do we do? Well, go out and get some drinks because we haven't had time to make another plan that's better than going out to get drinks. And that's what everyone else is doing, is going out to get hammered on the weekend. So here we are again on Friday night, ripping a bunch of shots. And
then I don't wake up until 12 o'clock on Saturday, and then I have to do my Saturday chores around the house to take care of the house that I only sleep in.
Yep.
And yeah.
I completely dropped. I completely dropped drinking. Maybe like once every couple months. If I'm in Brazil or something, I'll be like, let me get a beer. Let me go out to the beach and get a beer. Beer or maybe 2 beers. Very rarely, but I feel like I got my life back when I started spending more time in Latin America because, for all the reasons that we've just mentioned.
Well, and bars here aren't as glamorous, I would say, as bars in the U.S. Bars here are pretty ghetto.
Yeah, you don't feel fancy at these bars.
No, the bars here are kind of sketchy. Like, I don't know if I want to sit on that seat because, don't know where it's been.
In Colombia, it was funny. Colombia will have just a beautiful restaurant. They're really good at designing and making things look nice and welcoming. And some of the restaurants, you feel like you're in Miami. I mean, they're incredible. But then you'll sit down in the seat and they'll have like a plastic chair. It'll be this just amazing restaurant, but they miss the details. You sit in the plastic chair and it's like, wait, shit! You sit there for 30 minutes. You're like, I don't want to be here any longer. Let's get up and move around. This seat's terrible.
Honestly, I think they do that on purpose, though, because down here when people sit down, it's not kind of like Europe. You sit down and you could be, putting down roots for hours of eating plus the post eating And so I think they kind of do the plastic chairs in the fancy places to get you uncomfortable after 45. You're like, yeah, let's go outside. So they can
Well,
open up the table.
I don't know if it's, you might be right. It's definitely either that or they're just cheaping out on, one of the most important parts. I don't know what their reasoning is, but it works and it makes me get up and move. So, hey, what about the food in El Salvador? Tell me about that.
I the food. Well, of course, our national food is the
Yeah, what's
pupusa,
that?
and it's like a pita. It's like an enclosed pita bread but it's not, it hasn't been cut open and stuffed. They stuff it before they cook it. And so it's
Mhm.
either they usually use corn or rice flour, and then they'll put beans and cheese, or sometimes they'll put chicharrones, which is pork.
Mhm.
Sometimes they'll put leafy greens with cheese, like spinach and cheese inside.
Just spinach and cheese?
Oh yeah, just spinach and cheese inside. They'll put the most common is called a revuelta, and
Mhm.
that means it's got beans, cheese, and some chicharrones or pork inside. That's probably the most common, but they put lots of different things. I just did a video about they put birria. I think I said that right. It's
Mhm.
like pot roast. It's Latin pot roast where they take
Mhm.
the beef is kind of shredded,
Shredded beef, yeah.
and they put that inside of a pupusa. You can technically, I've never had a sweet pupusa. It's a technique. It's a salty thing. It's not a sweet one, not like an empanada, where you can have like a sweet one or a savory one.
Mhm.
But and then they have this. Their Salvadoran slaw is called cortido, and they made it typically from vinegar. It's cabbage and some other vegetables, maybe some carrots, some onions,
Mhm.
a jalapeno or two, and then they pickle it. They put it in vinegar and pickle it, and that's kind of their coleslaw, you would call it. And then so they have the cortido, and then they make a tomato sauce, like pure tomato sauce with a little bit of oregano, and also put the oregano in the cortido. But so you take the pupusa, and if you're Salvadoran, you tear a little part of the pupusa off, and then you pinch the cortido and put the salsa on top, and then you eat it with your hands.
Oh, that's
That's one
great.
of the cultural things that I mentioned in the cultural shocks is if eating with your hands grosses you out, El Salvador might not be for you because they
Mhm.
eat almost everything with their hands. And
Wow.
you won't necessarily find a whole lot of hand sanitizer and washing stations. Usually every restaurant, I mean, does have a sink where you can wash your hands, but yeah.
So take your own disinfectant, huh?
So bring your own disinfectant, or wash your hands when you get there, because a lot of Salvadoran food is done with your hands. If you pick up that fork and spoon or that fork and knife and start cutting, whoa,
Is it a?
it's a
I imagine it's a lot of seafood, right? Because it's on the coast.
oh yeah,
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 you have both coasts,
great.
right? You have Pacific and Caribbean.
And I grew up in Florida, but I grew up pretty poor as far as like my parents had 7 kids, and my dad was just a UPS delivery man.
Hmm.
And of course, my mom stayed home and took care of us. Um, so I mean, we did not have a lot of the luxuries of life. So we didn't grow up with seafood because seafood was always expensive. So
Hmm.
I do not like I don't like seafood because I'm just not accustomed to it, like the texture and the fishy taste. No, but I have to say, El Salvador, when it is this fresh, I love the ceviches
Ceviche, yeah.
that oh are amazing. They have no fishy taste. They're so flavorful, and the seafood is so fresh that it's like it doesn't have time to kind of turn. A lot of it's never even been frozen because we have so much coastline. So yeah, the seafood is wonderful. They are
So
really good at that.
you would say you can get seafood in 80% of the restaurants probably, or
Oh
a
yeah.
hundred.
Yeah, I'd say. Well, the problem we have is, I mean, I can eat seafood in El Salvador, whereas I usually don't eat seafood in like landlocked places, because it's not fresh. But I'd say of the restaurants there, I'd say a good 30 to 40% are seafood based restaurants.
Wow.
More so than say, meat, cow based.
That's
Or,
incredible. I love
I
that.
mean, well, okay, wait, if I'm being fair.
But they don't fry
Probably,
it all, right? I mean, you can get it grilled and broiled however you want it, right? It's not
oh,
just.
yeah, yeah. I'd say maybe 30% seafood, 30% chicken, and then the other 30%'s beef, kind of as a base for the restaurant. I mean, there's lots of restaurants that serve all three, but as you know,
What
fried chicken is king in Latin America. So.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's true.
Yeah.
Pretty much everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about so in terms of neighborhoods, right? What are the top neighborhoods that expats seem to flock to?
It depends on your vibe. The neighborhoods definitely have different vibes. Like, for example, the Bitcoiners. There's two main places for Bitcoiners. One is El Zonte, which was Bitcoin Beach, where it all started. And a lot of Bitcoiners will start down there, but after they get in that heat for a couple months, they're like, we're done. And so they'll move so there's a new Bitcoin community starting in Berlin. And Berlin has become quite the kind of cosmopolitan, international kind of escape away, which is kind of odd because it's pretty much out in the middle of nowhere. But it's 2 hours from San Sal and an hour to San Miguel. So it is like a pueblo, but there's a whole lot of foreigners from all over the world that are just super Bitcoin enthusiasts out there. So it really depends on the vibe. When it comes to international, like world schooling families and families that are immigrating to El Salvador, there's a big community in San Blas, which is one of the few residential beach communities down in between, in Surf City zone, you could say. That's where there's a lot of them, because it all depends on finding your tribe, finding people that have similar vibe to you. A lot of the more executives and the rest of the families are all in the San Sal area because that's where the schools are. That's where.
What about average price? Let's say you're coming down, you're going to rent a place for a year, check it out. In those areas, what's an average price for a couple bedrooms, couple bathrooms, maybe on the beach, I guess, or in the
That greatly depends. It greatly depends. If you're out of the city, you can get really nice, cheap. When I say city, I should say San Salvador is here, and then you go down to the beach, and this is Surf City 1. This area is the most expensive area in El Salvador. Outside of this area of El Salvador, your prices are very reasonable, like $600 and less.
For a two-bedroom, two-bath?
A two-bedroom. Well, probably be a two-bedroom, one bath.
But on the beach?
2 baths. It depends. If you're on this beach, on Surf City Beach, no way. No, I could say like San Blas, like for them, they have like 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom, nice, more gringo kind of houses, but they're a good 16 to 18 if you've got one that's been remodeled, and you would say like, hey, I could see this in the States. Well, then you could be talking 2,000, and that's increased a lot over the past 3 years.
So you could get so even if you paid a couple grand for a really nice house, like a gringo house that we just that's a good term. You're still going to save a heck of a lot of money on everything else though, because food's cheap and your quality of life's going to go up. I imagine medical too is
the medical. We have a medical tourism arm of our company where we help people book implants, dentures, big spa treatments, all that typical stuff that your insurance won't pay for that you want done. So for example, I just put together a package, or I have a video on my channel of my son. He came down and got his wisdom teeth out. And so he was here for a week. We got all four wisdom teeth that were impacted. And we took him up to the volcano. We took him to go surfing a little bit before he had his surgery. And then after the surgery, you know, we chilled and just did little things around the city. And the total cost for his trip was like 20, I'm trying to think. I think it's $2,800. And that's everything included. That even included our plane tickets from Atlanta. And whereas back here in Atlanta, just getting his wisdom teeth done was $4,000. It was $1,000 per tooth in the Atlanta area. So, I mean, it was win-win for us because he got to go on vacation and do all these fun things, and we got his teeth out. So
did you see any noticeable differences in the quality of dentistry in Salvador versus the U.S., or was it exactly the same?
No, there is a little bit of difference. I have a video on my channel of this one kind of very high tech dental office that, yeah, you would expect it as like in California, in the US. Like they have all the newest tech and all the newest things to survey you, but they're also the most expensive of El Salvador. Whereas there's other more basic dentists that that are much cheaper, but are more old school and don't use as many technological cameras and things like that to get things done. So there is, well, as you know, in Colombia, there is a lot of don't pay the cheapest. Like in the US, you can, if something is not, you know, up to par, you can complain and you can sit there and say, hey, this isn't
people,
right. You can sue
malpractice
people.
insurance, all the above.
There's tort law. You know, there's no tort law down here. So you don't want to go with the cheapest because then you're going to get cheap. And you don't necessarily want to go with the most expensive because then it's probably a bit of a scam and you're paying some gringo tax. You truly usually want to go with the best reviews, the most reviews, and the best reputation. But I know down here you can get a good dental cleaning for, you know, 25, $30.
Yeah. No, it's the same in Colombia, and you know, Brazil's more expensive, but Colombia, the medical care is incredible. But you're right about what you said. You have to go. You cannot go to the cheapest. I mean, there are some horror stories if you go cheap. But what I found, just like you said, if you go in the middle or above, the quality of care, the technology, and everything was just as good as I received in the U.S. I never had a bad medical experience in Colombia, and I've never met anyone from the U.S. That has had a bad medical. In fact, everyone that I've ever talked to has had incredible experiences there, and yeah, I just never saw any difference in my Colombian dentist versus my U.S. dentist. And to one of your points, the joke in Colombia was if they advertise on their social media or on their door that they speak English, run, because that's just a sign for, hey, we're trying to screw the gringo. We're gonna speak English to you, but we're gonna charge you 3 times the amount. So
yeah, because sometimes even 3 times the amount is still a massive discount for a gringo.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, and so yeah, they're not stupid. They're gonna do that. And so I mean, but that's the thing. That's why when I went through and I started the medical arm of this, I went through and I had to go through a ton of different suppliers and kind of say, okay, but we have these requirements. Like, do you fit all 4 of our requirements before you can be our partner? And one of those is, you know, you do speak English, because you don't, if you don't have good Spanish, you definitely don't want something lost in translation when it comes to your health.
Absolutely.
You know, and so it's like, do you speak English too? Do you understand first world type care, first world type, what expectations, and can you meet them? And then like the third one is, do you have that reputation? Do you have a really good long-standing reputation? Either I've done your experience and experienced it myself, or one of my clients has had a really good experience, and I go through social media, like all the groups of like, okay, what are the comments on this guy? And then the last thing, which was kind of the biggest weeder, was, are you giving back to the community? And that's the hardest one, because that's a big shift in Latin culture, to take care of one another instead of kind of compete with each other.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit more about your relocation business. I know you've kind of highlighted a few things that you guys do here, but why don't we dive into how you guys dive into the details of how you guys are helping people acclimate to the country?
Well, it started with my experience. I traveled the world. I'd done world schooling with my kids, and in fact, I was world schooling through Central America when I stumbled on El Salvador, and we were driving down from the States. We spent about a month in every country, exploring the country, studying the country, whatever we were studying at that time, with my kids, and yeah, we went all the way down to Costa Rica, because, like most gringos, that's all you ever hear about is Costa Rica.
Right. Yeah.
And I got there, but I found out it was Costa Rica. And
Yeah, no, it's expensive. It's been Americanized because of that same reason. I think that was one of the first countries, like I said earlier, that Americans go to and they want to turn it into America.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, most people that I know that have gone to Costa Rica, it's like, you know, it's not even really a Latin American experience anymore.
No, there's been a lot of deculturation, which is really sad. But I call it the California of Central America, because kind of like California, you cannot beat the nature. You can't beat Big Sur, Monterey Bay. I mean, it's just amazing, the nature that California has. But the politics and the issues and the expensiveness of California makes it a no-go for
Yep.
most people.
Well, there's
And
been a mass exodus out of that state in the last 4 or 5 years because of that. So,
and that's very similar to Costa Rica. And so that's why I really hope. And one of the biggest things in Costa I found was classism, because of the big influx of gringos. The gringos kind of treated it like what happens in Costa stays here, like a Vegas kind of thing. And so they would treat the ticos, that's what you call a Costa Rican. They kind of treated the chicos like their servants. And then the ticos turn around trying to treat the Nicas, the Nicaraguans that were there, like the gringos treated them. And I just, for all those factors, I was just like, no, it's gorgeous, but great place to visit, but not stay.
Yeah,
but,
I hate that too. I've noticed that in my travels, and I don't know why Americans do that. I think what happens though, what I've noticed in the U.S. is when guys are really winning in the U.S., truly winning and doing well in life, they treat people really well beneath them.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the guy like that isn't there yet, or never made it to where he wanted to be, that that comes to some of these places in Latin America and feels like he feels like a tough guy for the first time in his life. He feels like he has some control, maybe, because he probably has more money than a local. I see that a lot. I saw that a lot in Colombia, and I think a lot of these guys, again, for the first time in their lives, are like, "Oh my God, I have more money than everyone around me.
I'm top of the mount.
Yeah, I'm top of the food chain now, so I can be a jerk, right?"
Yeah.
But in the U.S., when I experience someone talking down to me or treating me badly or treating someone else badly, it was never the guy that was truly winning. The guys that are truly winning are trying to pull people up the ladder and say, "Hey, come with me," right?
Yeah.
Guys that aren't winning are creating competition between themselves and the people around them. So,
and that's kind of the cultural shift that at least I'm trying to do my part with, is with like helping foreigners, because some people will get on this there and say, "Oh, you guys are doing gentrification and we don't want the foreigners to move in because you're going to drive all of our prices up." And And so they're like, how are you helping them do this? Why are you promoting this, Jen? And I'm like, because guess what? You can't control other people. You can't control where they live. And you can't especially rich people. And so if you can't stop them, why not help them
create something to help,
create and have the right attitude when they come in? So they're here, like you said, the people that are truly in an abundance mindset, they rise up, and they help everyone around them rise up too.
That's right.
And that is the vibe in El Salvador, and that's what we're looking for. I had a friend that created a company that had a name that was very much a colonizer, like come be the boss of El Salvador. Yep. It's like, be the boss of El Salvador is kind of the type of the name that he had. And I was like, are you sure about that? I'm like, did you do your due diligence about El Salvador's past and why that might not fly? Why they don't want foreigners to come and be their bosses because of colonization? And so that's the thing. Like, sometimes that's another one of the things I do in my relocation tour, is I say, look, these people don't need you.
That's right.
They've got Bukele. He is making enough big strides.
He's the boss of El Salvador, not you.
Yeah, exactly. If they take advantage of the things that he's offering them, they will end up more successful in a much better place, mentally, financially, emotionally, familiarly, than in the past. Okay, so if you're coming in here, you've got to be here to empower them, and not, well, look, this place is better because I'm paying minimum wage to, my empleada and my nanny and my chef, and I'm stimulating the economy by paying $300 a month to them for their wages. And I'm like, no, you're not. And I'm like, no, you're keeping them in the same poor cycle that they've been in for a long time. I'm like, and I understand the part of, no, you don't want to pay them a lot higher than what is the standard rate for a certain amount of work. But dude, you can follow the Winco, the Publix model, create that scholarships, have scholarships for their kids, help pay for their kids' education, do something. The public health system takes an insane amount of time. It is not necessarily high quality care because it's public. So I'm like, have a little bit of kind of like a healthcare plan for when they get sick. There's other ways that you can empower and help people, or even, start a little retirement fund or something like, well, I'm going to pay you this, which is the going rate, but I'm going to put, $10 in Bitcoin, in your name. I'm going to start a Bitcoin account for you that is going to be, I'm going to put $10 in Bitcoin, which would be our equivalent of it, like an IRA, that after a certain number of years, it's yours for staying with and serving our family.
I like that idea. Yeah.
Something like that, because that is about empowerment and showing that, no, you're not the top dog, that you truly want to help the people rise up too. And that's what I've loved about Bitcoin, because the Salvadorans that got on Bitcoin when Bukele first started it, man, they have a savings. They have a retirement. Yep. Even if they started with 100, although now it's more money than they would make in a year.
Yeah.
And I like that kind of empowerment where anyone can be successful regardless of how much you're starting with.
Yeah, no, I agree. So, hey, I sincerely appreciate all this information. I think it was great. How do people reach out to you and get in touch with you and your business?
Well, on YouTube, we are Living Like a Local. There's no G. It's Living without the G. Living Like a Local in El Salvador. Or you can put in Geniati with eyes right down here.
Geniari.
Right there.
Yep.
Geniari. That's in TikTok, but that's in Spanish. English is all the other redes. what's that called?
The social media
Yeah.
platforms. Yeah.
Yeah, all the other social media platforms, we're under Living Like a Local, SV or El Salvador, and we should pop right on up. And we've got relocation tours, we've got legal aid, immigration, and then we've got the medical, hosting that we do for that. And we do private hosting. If you can't take a tour, or if you don't want a tour to be in a group tour, we do private hosting where you can just pay per day that you want an expert guide. But I will tell you, we're not a tourism industry. We are relocation immigration. So this isn't about visiting. This is about
somebody that wants to live there and move there.
Yeah, you want to know if this kind of life is a kind of life that will give you the freedom, comfort, the life that you want to live. And so that's how we're a little bit different.
That's awesome.
But incredible.
Good deal. Well, hey, sincerely appreciate the information, and I love what you're doing, and hopefully we can meet up soon. You know, I have a goal of getting there at some point next year. I'm not sure exactly when, but I can't wait to get down there and see it.
It's only $200 from Colombia to here.
Yeah, well, I'm not in Colombia, but
okay.
Yeah, I'm typically in Miami about half a year, and then let's say like 4 or 5 months I'm in Miami, and recently I've been in Brazil 5 or 6 months, and then somehow like near the end of the year, always I find my way to Colombia to get blood work and all that done. But I'm probably going to be ending that. I think it's probably going to find another destination. Maybe it's El Salvador. Let's see what happens.
I wouldn't be surprised if we're your new stop, because and people are coming from all over.
Cool. So, well, hey, let's stay in touch, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks so much, Matt.
Thank you for joining us on the Matt Chambers Show. I'm your host, Matt Chambers. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show to help others discover it. Until next time, keep traveling, keep doing business, and keep living beyond borders. See you soon.